Hi everyone, my name is Fiona Longmuir and I am so excited to introduce you to my book, Looking for Emily. Looking for Emily is a fun, cosy mystery about finding friends in unlikely places and learning to be the hero of your own story. When 12-year-old Lily moves to the sleepy seaside town of Edge, she is sure nothing exciting is ever going to happen to her again. But when she stumbles on a museum hidden in the middle of town, she finds out that even sleepy seaside towns have their secrets. The Museum of Emily is filled with the belongings of one ordinary little girl, a little girl who many years ago disappeared from town without a trace. With the help of her new friends Sam and Jay, Lily sets out to solve the mystery of who Emily was, why she disappeared, and who has created the strange museum. Like the book itself, the story of Looking for Emily also starts with the discovery of a strange little museum. So when my partner and I go on holiday, we like to seek out a local museum. The weirder and more obscure, the better. And when we visited Bratislava, we visited their clock museum. And it's this amazing, tiny, narrow, yellow building with a glossy green door, and it's all weird angles and elaborate wallpaper and the ticking of clocks everywhere, and I just thought this is like something out of a storybook. So I started to turn over the idea of a story set around a museum. And at first I was thinking about a museum of lost things, and that became the museum of a lost person. I think my favourite thing in the museum is the apple pie recipe, because I love apple pie and I love to make apple pie. And there's a scene in the book where Emily and her sister Caitlin make apple pie from their mum's recipe. And I learned to bake at the knee of my great granny, and I just think that food is the most amazing way to stay connected to and to honour the people who have come before us. I think recipes that are passed down are like these amazing little hand squeezes that come through the generations. Oh, hello Selby. This is Selby. Selby likes to get involved. My granddad is from a little seaside town on the west coast of Scotland called True. And I spent my whole childhood there, sort of getting rained on as I ate chips on the seaside wall and falling into rock pools and sticking my fingers in strawberry tarts, and it was just the most wonderful thing. And I think there's something about the seaside, especially in the colder months when Looking for Emily is set, when it's just you and the sea, and there's this sense that anything could happen. You know, there's this sense that you're in the real world, but there's some magic lurking just under the surface. My favourite moment in Looking for Emily is a huge spoiler, so I'm not going to talk about that, but if you've reached chapter 19, you know what I'm talking about. But my favourite scene is, there's a scene on the 1st of December where the whole town of Edge throws a beach party and everybody plunges into the sea, and it's freezing and there are hot chocolates and bonfires and sparklers and blankets and stargazing, and it's basically all of my very favourite things all happening at the same time. And the scene comes about 2/3 of the way through the book, so it's this kind of lovely, bright, warm firework of a scene before we start heading towards the big finale. There was a tiny window behind the desk, spilling sunlight into the room. The dust filling the air carved the light into a thick, solid slice, constantly shifting and changing. It made Lily's head spin a little. She returned to the front of the desk and read the small white placard standing to one side. "Welcome to the Museum of Emily. Please follow the arrows." An arrow pointed to a dark entryway on the left. Lily looked at her phone. She was pretty late. But given that she was already pretty late, there didn't seem any sense rushing off now. Might as well have a look around. The room Lily entered was oddly shaped, long and narrow. Glancing back at the spiral staircase, she realised that it must run parallel to the alleyway outside. This was what lay behind the facade of one of the white houses. She stood still, letting her eyes adjust to the gloom and shapes began to come into focus around her. Soft light leaked from an overhead bulb, casting long, wild shadows against the walls. One wall was blank, covered in dark wood panelling. Stretching the length of the opposite wall was an exhibition case. In the case, Lily could see an assortment of glass boxes, black frames, and small drawers, each labelled with a neat white rectangle. At the very end of the room was another doorway, upon which there was a gold arrow pointing downwards. The air felt heavy and musty, and no sounds from the outside world seeped in, not even the ever-present sea. She approached the exhibition case and peered inside. The first exhibit was a small piece of paper inside a photo frame, yellowed with age and spattered with something dark and sticky looking. Lily brushed the grime from the glass with her sleeve. The creases in the paper were deep and slightly furry, as though it had been folded and unfolded many times. Lily stopped to read the label. Mum's apple pie recipe, as made on Emily's birthday.